My name is Marcus, a 32-year-old software developer from Chicago, whose life changed overnight when I hit the lottery for $800,000. I thought winning would be the answer to all my prayers, but instead it revealed the true colors of the people I trusted most. What should have been the happiest moment of my life quickly turned into a family nightmare I never saw coming. Before I tell you how my parents tried to steal my lottery ticket, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had family try to take advantage of your success. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I was raised in what appeared to be a typical middle-class family. My parents, Richard and Patricia Wilson, provided a comfortable life for me and my younger brother, Kevin. We had a nice house, took annual family vacations, and never wanted for the basics. But beneath the surface of our family portrait, there was always an unmistakable current of favoritism flowing in Kevin's direction. From our earliest days, Kevin was the golden child. When we were kids, he always got the newest video games while I had to save my allowance for months. During high school, my parents bought him a car for his 16th birthday, while I worked weekends at the local grocery store to afford a beaten-up Honda that frequently broke down. When college time came around, they covered Kevin's full tuition at a private university, while I cobbled together scholarships and loans to attend state school. I never complained much about these disparities, having accepted from an early age that this was simply how our family operated. Kevin grew into exactly what you might expect from someone who never faced consequences. By 30, he had cycled through 3 different careers, each ending when he grew bored or faced any significant challenge. He started a gourmet food truck business that failed within 6 months, tried his hand at real estate until he lost his license for ethical violations, and most recently attempted to launch a social media marketing agency despite having no experience in the field. Through each of these ventures, my parents provided financial bailouts, emotional support, and endless justifications for his failures. Meanwhile, I took a more conventional path. After graduating with a computer science degree, I worked my way up at a tech startup, putting in long hours and building a solid reputation. I was recently promoted to senior developer, which came with a decent salary increase. Still, between Chicago's high cost of living and my remaining student loans, I wasn't exactly flush with cash. For years, I had been carefully saving for a down payment on a condo, wanting to finally have a place of my own instead of sharing an apartment with roommates. Despite the obvious preferential treatment in our family, I maintained a civil relationship with my parents and brother. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were a monthly tradition, and while these gatherings often featured subtle reminders of their favoritism, I attended out of a sense of family obligation. My philosophy was simple. I couldn't change them, but I could control my reactions and maintain my independence. One habit I had developed over the years was buying a lottery ticket each Friday. It started in college as a way to indulge in a bit of harmless daydreaming during stressful exam periods. $5 a week was my only real splurge, my small investment in possibility. I never expected to win anything significant, viewing it more as entertainment than a financial strategy. That all changed on a rainy Friday in April. I almost skipped my usual stop at the corner mart as I was running late for a dinner with friends. Something made me pull in at the last minute, perhaps a break in the downpour or just force of habit. Tom, the store owner who knew me as a regular, greeted me with his usual friendly nod. "The jackpot's up to $3 million this week," he mentioned, as I handed over my $5. "Maybe today's my lucky day," I replied with the casual optimism of someone who never actually expects to win. That evening, after dinner with friends, I returned to my apartment and absently flipped on the television while sorting through mail. The lottery drawing was just beginning, and I pulled out my ticket without much thought. As the numbers were called, I felt my heart rate accelerate. 1 match, then 2, then 3. By the 5th number, my hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the ticket. I had matched all 6 numbers for a second-tier prize of $800,000. In a state of disbelief, I checked the numbers online, then checked them again and again. Each time confirmed what seemed impossible: I had won. My first call was to my best friend Michael, who had just left the dinner we shared hours earlier. "Dude, you need to get over here right now," I said, my voice barely containing the excitement. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just won the lottery. $800,000. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought we had been disconnected. "Michael, you there? You better not be messing with me," he finally said, "because I will drive over there just to punch you if this is a joke." Not a joke, I swear. I matched all 6 numbers. Second-tier prize. 20 minutes later, Michael was at my door, and the reality of my win began to sink in as we stared at the ticket together. $800,000. Not enough to never work again, but enough to completely change my financial situation. Enough to transform my careful, measured plans into immediate possibilities. "You know what this means, right?" Michael said, a broad grin spreading across his face. "You can finally tell your micromanaging boss to shove it." But as the initial shock wore off, my practical nature took over. I wasn't going to quit my job or buy a Ferrari. I had more sensible plans for this unexpected windfall. The morning after discovering my win, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, methodically planning how to use the money. After taxes, I would likely receive around $560,000. My first priority was paying off the remaining $45,000 in student loans, instantly freeing me from the monthly payments that had been a constant presence since graduation. Next came the down payment on a modest condo in Wicker Park, a neighborhood I had long admired but considered out of reach. I estimated this would cost around $100,000. The bulk of the money, about $300,000, would go into diversified investments. I had always been interested in financial planning, and this was an opportunity to build real wealth for the future. Another $50,000 would be set aside for starting my own small software development company, a dream I had nurtured for years. I allocated $20,000 for a trip to Japan, a country whose culture and technology had fascinated me since childhood. Finally, I decided to donate $25,000 to a local nonprofit that taught coding skills to underprivileged youth. These plans felt responsible yet satisfying, balancing immediate enjoyment with long-term security. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of complete financial freedom, not in the sense of unlimited resources, but in the ability to make choices without constant constraint. That Saturday night, I invited my closest friends for a celebration dinner at my apartment. I splurged on expensive steaks and good wine, feeling justified in this small extravagance. As we raised our glasses in a toast, the genuine happiness on my friends' faces warmed me. These were people who had been there during my struggles, who had never asked for anything but my friendship, and who now celebrated my good fortune without a hint of envy. "To Marcus," Michael said, lifting his glass. "The luckiest guy I know, and the one who deserves it most." As the evening progressed, the conversation inevitably turned to my plans for collecting the winnings and managing the publicity that might come with it. "You should keep this quiet until the check clears," advised Sarah, who worked in banking. "Lottery winners become targets the minute the news gets out. And maybe consider claiming it anonymously, if your state allows it," added Daniel, an attorney. "The fewer people who know, the better." "What about your family?" Michael asked, knowing the complicated dynamics at play. "Are you planning to tell them?" I hesitated. Despite our strained relationship, the thought of keeping such significant news from my parents and brother felt wrong. Family was family after all. "I think I have to tell them," I said finally. "They're going to find out eventually, and I'd rather they hear it from me." Michael gave me a concerned look. "Just be careful. Money changes people, and from what you've told me about your brother." I know, I sighed. "But maybe this will be different. Maybe they'll just be happy for me." My friends exchanged glances, but said nothing more on the subject. As they left that night, each hugged me a little tighter than usual, as if sensing the challenges that might lie ahead. Over the next few days, I noticed an uptick in social media activity from relatives I rarely heard from. A second cousin commented on my profile picture after years of silence. An aunt I saw only at funerals suddenly sent a friend request. These small interactions triggered a mild uneasiness, making me wonder if news of my win had somehow leaked. Then came a text from Kevin. "Hey bro, we should catch up soon. Families gotta stick together, right?" The message was innocuous enough, but something about the timing and the unusual sentiment made my stomach tighten. Kevin and I texted occasionally about family gatherings, but he had never expressed such familial devotion before. Still, I tried to dismiss my concerns as paranoia. Surely my own brother wouldn't see me as just a potential source of cash. Despite these small warning signs, I remained hopeful that my family would respond with the same genuine happiness my friends had shown. Perhaps this windfall would even heal some of the old wounds between us. With this optimistic outlook, I decided to share my news at the upcoming Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The following Sunday, I arrived at my parents' suburban home feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. The familiar brick two-story looked exactly as it had throughout my childhood, a physical reminder of both comfort and complicated memories. My mother answered the door in her usual Sunday best pearl earrings catching the afternoon light. "Marcus, you're early," she said, accepting my brief hug. "Your father's watching golf in the den, and dinner's not for another hour." "Actually, Mom, I have some news I wanted to share with both of you before Kevin arrives." Something in my tone must have conveyed the importance of my announcement because she immediately called for my father. As we settled in the living room with its too formal furniture that had always been more for show than comfort, I took a deep breath. "I wanted you both to know that something amazing happened." I began, unable to keep a smile from spreading across my face. "I won the lottery last Friday, $800,000. Their reactions seemed genuine at first. My mother gasped and pressed her hand to her chest. My father's eyebrows shot up, his usual stoic expression giving way to surprise. "Marcus, that's wonderful," my mother exclaimed, moving to embrace me. "What incredible luck." "Congratulations, son," my father added with a firm nod. "That's quite a windfall." For a brief shining moment, it felt like the family moment I had hoped for, simple happiness at my good fortune, without complications. But that moment was short-lived. "Have you thought about what you'll do with it?" my father asked, leaning forward with sudden interest. Before I could answer, he continued, "Smart planning is essential with this kind of money. You know your brother has been struggling with that business of his." And there it was, the pivot I should have expected. Not even 5 minutes of celebration before Kevin became the focus. "Yes," my mother chimed in. "Kevin was just telling us last week about the daycare expenses for the twins, and college funds need to be started early these days." I felt a familiar sinking feeling. Kevin's twins, my niece and nephew, were adorable 3-year-olds who had become the center of my parents' world since their birth. While I certainly didn't begrudge the children anything, the speed with which my parents had steered the conversation toward Kevin's needs was disappointing, if not surprising. "I've actually made some plans already," I said, trying to maintain my enthusiasm. "Paying off my student loans, investing for the future, maybe buying a condo." "Oh, well, yes, that sounds sensible," my mother replied, her tone suggesting she found my plans rather boring. "But family is the best investment, don't you think?" Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, announcing Kevin's arrival. My mother hurried to answer it, clearly eager to share my news. I heard her excited whispers in the hallway, followed by Kevin's voice rising in surprise. Moments later, my brother entered the living room, his wife Amanda trailing behind him. Kevin, as always, commanded the room with his presence. While we shared some physical similarities, his confident posture and easy smile had always made him seem more substantial somehow. "Marcus, the lucky man," he boomed, giving me a backslapping hug that felt just slightly too enthusiastic. "Mom just told us the news. 800 grand, huh? That's life-changing." "Congratulations," Amanda added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "What amazing luck." As we moved to the dining room for dinner, the conversation remained focused on my lottery win, but in ways that made me increasingly uncomfortable. My parents kept using phrases like family wealth and shared blessings. Kevin repeatedly mentioned his financial challenges, explaining that his marketing agency was just one investor away from tremendous success. "You know," he said, "between bites of pot roast, with the right capital injection, we could expand to corporate clients. The potential return would be incredible." "That sounds like a great opportunity," my mother responded enthusiastically. "Doesn't it, Marcus?" I focused on my plate, unwilling to commit to anything. I'm still processing everything. The money isn't even in my account yet. "But you will be helping Kevin out, of course," my father stated rather than asked. "Family takes care of family." The assumption in his tone ignited a spark of anger I tried to suppress. I haven't made any decisions about that yet. I have my own financial goals to consider first. A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother broke it with a forced laugh. Well, of course you do, dear. But after those are taken care of, there should be plenty left to help your brother get on his feet. Those children need security. Kevin nodded solemnly. The twins' preschool tuition is killing us, and Amanda had to cut back her hours to care for them when they had those ear infections last month. The rest of the dinner continued in this vein with increasingly direct suggestions about how I should distribute my winnings. By the time dessert was served, my parents and Kevin seemed to have mentally allocated at least half of my lottery prize to various family needs, all of which centered around Kevin, Amanda, and the twins. When I attempted to explain my carefully thought-out plans for the money, my parents exchanged glances that clearly communicated their disapproval of my selfishness. Kevin looked genuinely confused that I wasn't jumping at the chance to solve his financial problems. I just don't understand why you need $300,000 in investments when that money could help put the twins through college someday, he said, shaking his head as if I was being completely unreasonable. The final straw came when Amanda began discussing private school options they were considering for the twins' schools with tuition rates that would conveniently align with regular contributions from a generous uncle. I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my water glass. I need to head out. Early meeting tomorrow. But you haven't had coffee yet, my mother protested. Another time, I said, already moving toward the door. Thanks for dinner. As I drove home, a profound sense of disappointment settled over me. I had hoped, perhaps naively, that my good fortune would bring joy to my family without strings attached. Instead, it had taken less than an hour for them to view me as little more than a financial resource to be tapped for Kevin's benefit. The familiar dynamics of our family had not changed. They had only been magnified by the prospect of money. 3 days after the uncomfortable family dinner, I returned home from work to find my parents' car parked outside my apartment building. This was unusual, as they rarely visited my place, generally preferring I come to them. With a sense of foreboding, I climbed the stairs to my third-floor unit. They were waiting in the hallway, my father standing stiffly while my mother nervously adjusted her purse strap. Their expressions were a mix of determination and rehearsed concern that immediately put me on edge. "Mom, Dad, this is unexpected," I said, unlocking my door and gesturing them inside. "Is everything okay?" "We need to talk, Marcus," my father said, his tone reminiscent of childhood scoldings. They followed me into my modest apartment, taking in the surroundings with subtle disapproval. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, while my father remained standing, arms crossed. "We've been thinking about your situation," he began without preamble, "and we've come to a decision about how this should be handled." "My situation," I repeated, already feeling my defenses rise. "You mean my lottery winnings?" "Yes," my mother interjected, her voice taking on the placating tone she often used during family conflicts. "We know this is exciting for you, but we need to discuss what's best for the family as a whole." My father nodded firmly. "Kevin has responsibilities you don't have. He has children to provide for, a mortgage, business debts that are creating significant stress. And the twins need stability," my mother added. "Their future education, proper health care, all those things require planning and resources." I sat down slowly, already seeing where this conversation was heading. "I understand Kevin has responsibilities, but those are his responsibilities, not mine." My father's expression hardened. "That's a very selfish attitude, Marcus. Family supports each other. Your brother would do the same for you if situations were reversed." I bit back a laugh at this blatant falsehood. Kevin had never sacrificed anything for me, and we all knew it. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My father straightened his shoulders. "We think the fair thing would be for you to give half of your winnings to your brother. $400,000 would make a tremendous difference in their lives, while you'd still have plenty for yourself." The bluntness of the demand stunned me into momentary silence. They weren't suggesting a small gift or loan, but literally half of my winnings. "That's not going to happen," I finally said, my voice quiet but firm. "I have plans for that money, plans I've thought through carefully." My mother's eyes filled with tears, her go-to tactic when things weren't going her way. "I can't believe how selfish you've become. Kevin has children to think about. What about your niece and nephew? Don't you care about their future?" Of course I care about them, I responded, feeling the familiar guilt trip taking effect despite my resolution. But that doesn't mean I'm responsible for financially supporting them. Kevin and Amanda are their parents. Kevin has always had more challenges than you, my father argued, his voice rising. You've always had an easier time, more natural abilities. This is your chance to even things out a bit. I stood up, anger finally overtaking my usual conflict avoidance. Even things out. Are you serious? You've been evening things out in Kevin's favor my entire life. When has he ever had to face consequences for his choices? When has he ever had to work for anything without you bailing him out? My mother gasped at my outburst. That's not true. We've always treated you both equally. The blatant denial of reality pushed me further. That's complete nonsense, and you know it. Kevin got a car for his birthday. I worked weekends for mine. You paid his full college tuition. I'm still paying off loans. He's failed at 3 businesses that you've funded. When does it end? My father's face reddened. We've heard enough of this ingratitude. Here's how it's going to be. Either you agree to share this windfall with your brother, or you can consider yourself no longer part of this family. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I stared at my parents, these people who had raised me but had always placed me second, and felt something inside me finally break free. I need time to think, I managed to say, not yet ready for the full rupture their ultimatum threatened. You have until Friday, my father declared. Then we expect you at our house with your decision, the right decision. After they left, I spent a sleepless night pacing my apartment, wrestling with conflicting emotions. The rational part of me knew I was being manipulated and taken advantage of, yet decades of family conditioning made it difficult to stand firm against their pressure. I kept hearing my mother's voice asking if I really cared about my niece and nephew, kept seeing my father's disappointed expression. Around 3 in the morning, I called Michael, who answered groggily but listened as I poured out the whole situation. They're trying to rob you, man, he said bluntly when I finished. This isn't about family. It's about using you as an ATM, just like they always have. But what if they really do cut me off, I asked, voicing my deepest fear. They're still my parents. Kevin's still my brother. Are they though? Michael challenged. In any way that matters. Family supports each other, yeah, but that support should go both ways. When have they ever put your needs first? His question hung in the air as I struggled to come up with even one clear example. The next day, I researched family conflicts over lottery winnings online, finding countless stories of relationships destroyed by money. The pattern was always the same: initial excitement followed by escalating demands followed by permanent rifts when those demands weren't met. The advice from lawyers and financial advisors was unanimous: set clear boundaries early and maintain them firmly. By Friday morning, I had made my decision. I would not be giving half my winnings to Kevin. I would offer a one-time gift of $25,000 for my niece and nephew's education fund, a generous gesture that wouldn't compromise my financial security. With this compromise in mind, I drove to my parents' house that evening, mentally preparing for another difficult conversation. When I arrived, I was surprised to find Kevin's car already in the driveway. Entering without knocking, as was family custom, I found my parents, Kevin and Amanda, sitting in the living room, arranged almost like a tribunal awaiting my appearance. Marcus. My mother greeted me with unusual formality. We're glad you've come to your senses. The presumption that I had already capitulated to their demands immediately raised my hackles. I've made a decision, but you shouldn't assume you know what it is. Kevin leaned forward, an eager expression on his face. Look, bro, I've been thinking about how to invest the money. I've got a solid business plan that could benefit both of us. Amanda nodded enthusiastically. And we've already toured Brighton Academy for the twins. It's perfect for them, but the deposit is due next month. I stared at them incredulously. They had already been spending my money in their minds, dividing up my winnings before I'd even agreed to share anything. I'm not giving you half the money, I stated flatly, looking directly at my brother. That was never going to happen. The room went deadly silent. My father's face darkened while my mother's hand flew to her mouth in shock. I've decided to set up education funds for the twins, I continued. $25,000 each to be used only for their schooling when they're older. Instead of seeing this as the generous compromise it was, my family reacted with outrage. 25,000, Kevin scoffed. That's nothing. That won't even cover 2 years of private elementary school. This isn't just about the kids, my father interjected angrily. Your brother needs capital for his business. He has a mortgage bills piling up. Maybe he should have thought about that before starting a third failed business. I replied, my patience finally exhausted. I'm not responsible for bailing Kevin out of his financial decisions. Amanda stood up, her face flushed with anger. So you're just going to hoard all that money for yourself while your own family struggles, while your niece and nephew go without opportunities? They're 3 years old, I pointed out. And they're hardly going without. They have 2 parents who should be providing for them, not expecting handouts from relatives. My mother began to sob dramatically. I don't even recognize who you've become. So cold, so selfish. This is our final word on the matter, my father declared, standing to his full height. You will give half your winnings to your brother, or you are no longer welcome in this family. No more Sunday dinners, no holidays, no relationship with your niece and nephew. Is that what you want? I looked around at these people who claimed to love me but were willing to discard me the moment I refused to fund their desires. In that moment, something shifted inside me, a recognition that perhaps losing this conditional form of family might not be the tragedy they assumed it would be. If that's your ultimatum, then I guess this is goodbye, I said quietly, turning toward the door. You'll give half to your brother, or get out of this house, my father shouted after me, his voice shaking with rage. I paused at the doorway, looking back one last time. I'll be by tomorrow to collect the spare house key I left with you. After that, don't contact me again. As I walked to my car, I heard Kevin's voice behind me calling my name, but I didn't turn around. The weight of decades of unequal treatment, of always being the responsible one, yet never the favored one, propelled me forward. For the first time, I was choosing myself over their demands, and despite the pain, it felt like freedom. The next morning, I drove back to my parents' house, hoping to retrieve my spare key and make a clean break without further drama. I had called ahead twice, but no one answered, which was unusual for a Saturday morning when my parents typically lingered over coffee and the newspaper. Their cars were in the driveway, however, indicating they were home. After knocking several times with no response, I remembered to hide a key under the stone turtle in the garden, a family secret from childhood. Part of me felt uneasy about entering uninvited after yesterday's confrontation, but I also wanted to resolve this situation quickly and move forward with my life. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside, but I could hear muffled voices coming from my father's study at the back of the house. Moving quietly through the familiar hallway, I approached the partially open door, intending to announce my presence. Before I could speak, however, I caught a glimpse of activity that froze me in place. My parents and Kevin were huddled around my father's desk, heads bent together in concentration. Spread out before them was what appeared to be my lottery ticket, the very one I had shown them earlier in the week as proof of my win. My father was holding a pen, practicing a signature on a separate piece of paper. With a shock, I realized he was attempting to duplicate my signature. It has to be perfect, my mother was saying in a hushed tone. The lottery commission will check it carefully. I've almost got it, my father muttered, making another attempt. Marcus has that little curl at the end of the S. That's tricky. Kevin picked up the ticket, examining it closely. Once we have the signature right, we just need to turn this in before he does. They said winners have 60 days to claim right. And we have all his information from the tax forms he filled out when he worked for us that summer, my mother added. Social security number, birth date, everything they might ask for. What about ID? Kevin asked. Won't they need that? My father waved dismissively. I'll say I forgot it and have to come back. By then we'll have figured something out. Maybe that old fake ID you had in college could be altered. I stood there, blood pounding in my ears as the full magnitude of their betrayal became clear. They weren't just trying to pressure me into sharing my winnings, they were actively plotting to steal them entirely. The people who had raised me, who should have protected me from harm, were conspiring to commit fraud and identity theft against their own son. Unable to contain my shock any longer, I pushed the door open fully. What the hell do you think you're doing? 3 heads snapped up in unison, faces registering alarm, and then guilt as they realized they had been caught. My mother recovered first, hurriedly trying to gather the papers on the desk. "Marcus, we didn't hear you come in," she stammered, her voice unnaturally high. "Clearly," I replied coldly, stepping into the room. "Were you planning to forge my signature and steal my lottery ticket? My own family?" Kevin had the decency to look ashamed, but my father's expression quickly shifted from surprise to defiance. "We were trying to help you make the right decision," he said, attempting to sound authoritative despite being caught in the act. "Sometimes children need guidance to do what's best for the family." "Guidance," I repeated incredulously. "This isn't guidance. This is theft. This is fraud. This is a crime that could send all of you to jail." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You're overreacting, Marcus. We were just trying to ensure Kevin and the twins got the support they need. You were being so stubborn, so selfish." "Give me the ticket," I demanded, holding out my hand. "Now." Kevin clutched the ticket protectively. "We're your family. That money should benefit all of us, not just you. The twins need." "The twins, the twins, the twins," I exploded, my voice rising. "I'm sick of hearing about what the twins need. What about what I need? What about basic respect from my own family? What about not having my own parents try to steal from me?" My father stood up, his face reddening. "Watch your tone, young man. Everything we've done has been for this family. You've always had advantages Kevin didn't have. You owe him this." The absurdity of his statement in the midst of their criminal activity was almost laughable. "I owe him, for what exactly? For being your favorite, for never having to work for anything, for having you bail him out of every bad decision." "That's not fair," Kevin protested. "I've had struggles you know nothing about." "Hand over the ticket," I repeated, ignoring his self-pity. "Or I'm calling the police right now and reporting it stolen." My mother gasped. "You wouldn't call the police on your own family. You stopped being family the moment you decided to steal from me," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt despite the situation. "The ticket, now." After a tense standoff, Kevin reluctantly handed over the ticket, which had been crumpled in his tight grip. I examined it carefully, confirming it was indeed my winning ticket, though now somewhat damaged. "You should know," I said, tucking the ticket safely into my wallet, "that this little scheme would never have worked anyway. I already registered my win with the Lottery Commission. They have my information on file, including a scan of the ticket. Even if you had managed to forge my signature perfectly, you would have been caught immediately." The color drained from my father's face as the reality of what they had attempted and how badly it could have backfired began to sink in. "We were desperate," my mother whispered, as if that explained everything. "Kevin's business is about to go under. The bank is threatening foreclosure on their house. The twins might lose their preschool placement." "And your solution was to commit a felony?" I asked, genuinely bewildered by their thinking. "To steal from your own son, to risk going to prison." "It's not stealing if it stays in the family," my father insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. I laughed without humor. "That's not how the law works, Dad. And it's not how family is supposed to work either." Kevin, seeming to realize the gravity of what they had nearly done, attempted a different approach. "Look, Marcus, we made a mistake. We panicked. But we're still family. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," I replied, heading toward the door. "You were willing to steal everything from me. Not ask for help, not negotiate, but take everything. We're done." My mother rushed after me, grabbing my arm. "Please, Marcus. The twins are innocent in all this. Don't punish them for our mistake." Her attempt to use the children as emotional leverage one more time was the final straw. Those children have 2 parents and 2 grandparents who were just willing to commit fraud for money. Maybe focus on being better role models instead of trying to manipulate me through them. As I walked out of the house for what I knew would be the last time, my father called after me, his voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "You'll regret this. Marcus' family is all that matters in the end." I turned back briefly. "No, what matters is respect, honesty, and genuine care, none of which you've shown me today or for most of my life. Goodbye." In my car, hands shaking slightly from the confrontation, I examined the crumpled lottery ticket more carefully. Despite the damage, all the essential information remained legible. Still, I would need to be extra careful with it until I could officially claim my prize. The irony wasn't lost on me that in trying to steal my windfall, my family had nearly destroyed the physical evidence of it. As I drove away from the house, I grew up in a strange sense of calm, replaced the anger and shock. The worst had happened, the relationship had fractured beyond repair, and yet I felt lighter somehow. The constant need to seek approval from people who would never truly put my interests first had been a weight I hadn't fully recognized until it was lifted. Monday morning found me sitting in the office of Diana Chen, a lawyer specializing in lottery winners and sudden wealth management. Her downtown office projected exactly the kind of competence and discretion I needed after the weekend's events. "So your family attempted to forge your signature and claim your winnings," she summarized after I explained the situation. "And you're concerned they might make further attempts to access your money." "Yes," I confirmed. "I don't think they'll try anything with the lottery commission now that they know I've registered my win, but I'm worried about what might happen once the money is in my account." Diana nodded, making notes. "Unfortunately, your concerns are valid. Lottery winners often face exactly this kind of family pressure and sometimes outright fraud. Here's what we're going to do." Over the next hour, she outlined a comprehensive plan to protect my assets. First, we would file a police report documenting the attempted theft, creating an official record without necessarily pressing charges unless further attempts were made. Next, she would help me set up a revocable trust to hold the lottery winnings, providing an additional layer of security. Finally, she recommended changing all my passwords, setting up two-factor authentication on financial accounts, and placing a freeze on my credit to prevent unauthorized applications. "What about claiming the prize?" I asked. "The ticket is a bit damaged now." "I'll accompany you to the lottery commission," she assured me. "I've handled similar situations before. As long as the barcode and numbers are legible, there shouldn't be an issue, especially since you've already registered your win." After leaving the lawyer's office, I headed to the police station to file the report. The officer taking my statement seemed unsurprised by the family conflict. "Happens more often than you'd think," he commented as he typed. "Money brings out the worst in people, especially family. You did the right thing coming in." With the legal protections in place, I took the additional step of changing my phone number and temporarily moving in with Michael, who had immediately offered his guest room when I called to update him on the situation. "Stay as long as you need," he insisted, helping me carry in the essential items I'd packed. "My place isn't fancy, but at least no one here is trying to steal your lottery ticket." Over the next week, the messages from my family began pouring in, first as angry accusations, then shifting to tearful apologies as they realized the severity of their actions. My mother left voicemails claiming she was having chest pains from the stress. My father sent emails attempting to minimize what had happened as a momentary lapse in judgment. Kevin tried multiple approaches, from angry demands to pitiful pleas about his children's future. I read or listened to each message but responded to none. Diana had advised against any communication that might be construed as forgiveness or acceptance of their behavior, as it could complicate matters if legal action became necessary later. The most disturbing development came when Kevin showed up at my workplace, unannounced, causing a scene in the reception area until security escorted him out. After that incident, I took a 2-week leave of absence, using some of my accumulated vacation time to focus on finalizing the lottery claim and finding a new place to live. With Diana accompanying me, I presented my damaged but valid ticket to the lottery commission. As she had predicted, the registration I had already completed helped smooth the process, and after verifying my identity and the ticket's authenticity, I was officially confirmed as the winner of $800,000. Following the advice of both Diana and the financial advisor she had connected me with, I opted for minimal publicity. The lottery commission would release my name as required by law, but I declined the standard photo opportunity with the oversized check and gave no interviews. Despite these precautions, extended family members and old acquaintances began reaching out almost immediately after the win became public. Distant cousins suddenly remembered our childhood bond. A high school classmate I hadn't spoken to in 15 years messaged about an amazing investment opportunity. Each contact reinforced the wisdom of the protective measures I had put in place. My parents, seemingly realizing their direct approaches weren't working, enlisted various family members to contact me on their behalf. My aunt called to tell me my mother was devastated and not eating. An uncle emailed to say the family would never be whole until I forgave them. Even my elderly grandmother was recruited to leave a guilt-inducing message about family forgiveness being a virtue. Throughout this barrage, I maintained my silence, focusing instead on moving forward with my life. With my financial advisor's help, I allocated the funds according to my original plan, with one significant change. Instead of the $25,000 for each of my niece and nephew, I established anonymous scholarships at a planned local community college for students facing financial hardship. 3 weeks after claiming my prize, I found a modest but comfortable condo in a neighborhood I loved, far enough from my parents' home to make unexpected visits unlikely. The process of furnishing it and making it my own became a form of therapy, each decision a small assertion of independence and self-care. Michael and my other close friends formed a protective circle around me during this transition, helping with the move, organizing a housewarming gathering, and providing the emotional support my family had failed to offer. In their genuine happiness for my good fortune and respect for my boundaries, I found a chosen family that valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. On social media, my parents had taken to portraying me as the villain in our family drama, posting vague but pointed comments about ungrateful children and the importance of sharing blessings. These digital guilt trips only strengthened my resolve to maintain distance from their toxic influence. As weeks turned into months, I gradually established a new normal. I continued working at my job, finding satisfaction in the routine and the respect I had earned there through years of dedication. The knowledge that I no longer needed the paycheck to survive gave me a new confidence in professional situations, allowing me to take creative risks and speak up more in meetings. With part of my investment fund, I began taking steps toward my dream of starting a small software development company, registering a business name, and beginning to build a portfolio of potential projects. This productive focus helped channel my energy away from family drama and toward a positive future. Perhaps most significantly, I started therapy to address the long-standing patterns of family dysfunction that had culminated in the lottery incident. For the first time, I fully examined the impact of always being the less favored child and the unhealthy dynamics that had shaped my relationships and self-image. What your family did was an extreme version of something that had been happening your entire life, my therapist observed during one session. They were taking from you emotionally and now financially, without genuine concern for your well-being. This perspective helped me see that maintaining distance wasn't about punishment or revenge, but about protecting myself from a harmful pattern that would likely never change. With this understanding came a gradual release of guilt and a growing sense of peace with my decision to prioritize my own well-being. 6 months after the lottery win, I looked around at my new life, built on my own terms and protected from those who had tried to exploit me, and felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for the money itself, but for the clarity it had brought. Sometimes the most valuable things we gain aren't measured in dollars, but in the wisdom to recognize toxic relationships and the courage to walk away from them. 1 year after winning the lottery, my life had transformed in ways both expected and surprising. The financial changes were the most obvious. I was debt-free, owned my condo outright, and had established a healthy investment portfolio that would provide security for years to come. My small software company had landed its first 2 clients and was beginning to build a reputation for innovative solutions in healthcare data management. But the more profound changes were internal. The person I had become was more confident, more discerning about relationships, and more at peace with setting boundaries. I had developed a community of friends who supported each other's successes without expectation or envy. My therapist had recently suggested we reduce our sessions to monthly check-ins, noting the significant progress I'd made in recognizing and addressing unhealthy relationship patterns. On a crisp fall morning, almost exactly a year since the family confrontation, I met Michael for our traditional Saturday coffee at a neighborhood cafe. As we settled into our usual corner table, he slid his phone across to me, open to a social media post. "Thought you should see this," he said gently. No pressure to respond or anything. The post showed my parents' house with a sold sign in the front yard. The caption, written by a mutual acquaintance, expressed surprise at the Wilson family's sudden downsizing and included well wishes for their new chapter in a smaller home. "They sold the house?" I asked, genuinely surprised. The family home had been a point of pride for my parents for over 30 years. Michael nodded. "From what I hear through the grapevine, they had to. Apparently, Kevin's business finally went under completely, and they'd co-signed on some pretty substantial loans for him." I felt a complex mixture of emotions, not satisfaction at their misfortune, but a somber recognition of how predictable this outcome had been. For decades, my parents had enabled Kevin's financial irresponsibility, and eventually the consequences had caught up with all of them. "There's more," Michael added hesitantly. "Lisa from accounting ran into Amanda at the grocery store last week. She and Kevin are separated. She took the twins and moved in with her parents in Michigan." This news hit harder. Despite everything I cared about my niece and nephew, and the thought of their parents' separation added another layer of instability to their young lives. For a moment, I questioned my decision to maintain distance from the family, wondering if I could have helped prevent this outcome. "This isn't on you," Michael said, reading my expression accurately. "They made their choices long before the lottery ticket. All you did was refuse to be their safety net one more time." He was right, of course. My parents' financial problems weren't the result of my boundaries, but of their own long-standing pattern of poor decisions and enabling behavior. If I had given Kevin half my winnings as demanded, it would have only delayed the inevitable while depleting my own resources. Over the following weeks, I received several indirect attempts at contact from my parents. A family friend happened to mention they were struggling financially. My mother's sister called to tell me they had moved into a small apartment and were too proud to ask for help. Each message carried the clear subtext that I should step in and rescue them, just as they had always expected me to be the responsible one, while simultaneously favoring Kevin. After careful consideration and discussion with my therapist, I decided to respond in a limited way on my own terms. I sent a brief email to my parents with a link to a financial counseling service I had researched offering to pay for 6 months of sessions if they were interested in professional guidance for their situation. The offer was neither accepted nor acknowledged. Despite this continued dysfunction, I found myself increasingly at peace with the separation. The clarity that had come with distance allowed me to see our family dynamics with new eyes, recognizing patterns that had been invisible when I was enmeshed in them. My parents had always seen me as the strong, capable one who didn't need support, using that perception to justify directing all their resources and attention to Kevin. The lottery had simply brought this long-standing dynamic to its logical extreme. As I approached the anniversary of my win, I decided to honor the occasion by fulfilling one of my original plans for the money. I established a scholarship program at a local community college for students pursuing degrees in computer science who came from challenging family backgrounds. The application essay asked students to describe how they had overcome family obstacles to pursue their education, a theme that felt deeply personal to me. Reading through the first batch of applications, I was moved by stories of resilience and determination that echoed aspects of my own journey. Young people who had navigated family addiction, financial hardship, or emotional neglect to pursue their dreams reminded me that while we can't choose our birth families, we can choose how we respond to the hand we're dealt. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my condo watching the sunset over the city skyline, I reflected on everything that had transpired since that rainy Friday when I bought the winning ticket. The money had changed my life, certainly, but not in the ways I had initially expected. More than financial freedom, it had given me the clarity to see relationships for what they truly were and the courage to create necessary distance from toxic dynamics. In the end, winning the lottery had cost me my family of origin, but it had given me something far more valuable: self-worth that wasn't tied to what I could provide for others, boundaries that protected my well-being, and the freedom to build a life based on genuine connection rather than obligation. The lesson wasn't that money changes people, but that it reveals who they already are. My parents and brother hadn't suddenly become entitled or manipulative when they learned about my winnings. They had simply revealed more clearly the dynamics that had always existed beneath the surface of our relationships. And in that painful revelation came the gift of truth, allowing me to finally free myself from patterns that had constrained me for decades. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I felt a profound sense of gratitude not for the money itself but for the journey it had initiated. Sometimes the most valuable things we gain aren't the ones we can deposit in a bank account, but the wisdom to recognize what truly matters and the courage to build a life aligned with our deepest values. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have shared your lottery winnings with family members who had always taken you for granted? Or would you have held firm to your boundaries like I did? Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story about standing up for yourself, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes the biggest win isn't the lottery ticket but discovering your own worth.